Hey there, leaders in the making. Today, we're diving deep into what it really means to lead in the US Army. We're talking ADP 622.
Yeah, that's right.
And trust me,
This is a big one.
this isn't just another dusty manual on a shelf somewhere.
What
This
is
is like your playbook to becoming the leader everyone wants on their team. The one who inspires, who motivates,
Who gets the job done?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
achieves. So,
It's a roadmap for success, not just, for the Army as a whole, but for you, your career, your impact on the soldiers you lead every single day.
okay, so real quick, for anyone who's maybe just starting out, what is ADP 622?
So ADP 622 stands for Army Doctrine Publication 622, and it lays out exactly what Army leadership means. Like, this is the definition.
And get this, it pulls this really powerful line from an older field manual, FM 100-5.
Oh, yeah.
And it says, every unit commander of the U.S. Army is responsible for the progressive professional development of every soldier in his command.
Wow.
Mic drop, right.
Straight to the point.
That's from 1976, by the way.
Yeah, and it still hits hard.
Yeah.
That responsibility to develop others. It's not new. It's fundamental. Baked right into the Army's DNA.
No pressure, right.
Right.
But seriously, it just highlights how much the Army values leadership development, like at every level. It's not something you just pick up as you go. It's everyone's responsibility.
Exactly. And that's where ADP 622 comes in with this great framework. And it all centers around this word, develops. It breaks it down into 4 core competencies.
Okay, so what are those for?
The first one is prepare self.
Uh-huh.
All about you.
Hmm.
Owning your own growth, recognizing that as a leader, you're always a work in progress.
Right.
Then you've got creates a positive environment.
Oh, I can already see how that's a big one.
Huge.
I mean, we've all had that leader, the one who can make or break morale.
Absolutely. Because strong teams, they need an environment built on trust, respect. That's how you get things done.
Right.
Then there's develops others.
Okay.
Because a true leader empowers everyone around them, helps them hit their full potential. And finally, you've got stewards the profession. This is about the bigger picture. Leaving the Army stronger than you found it. Leaving that lasting legacy behind.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to unpack. It's so much more than just barking orders. It's about creating a whole culture, a culture of growth and excellence, really.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into that first competency. Prepare self. I think a lot of us can relate to the idea that nobody's perfect, right? But what does prepare self actually look like practically speaking?
It starts with self-awareness.
Yeah.
Really taking stock. What are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses?
Right.
And ADP 622 really drives home that this isn't about being hard on yourself. It's about honesty and seeking support where you need it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't really improve what you don't acknowledge in the first place, right?
Exactly.
But it's also got to be more than just recognizing your weak spots, right? It's about actively getting better, learning and growing.
You got it. The document really emphasizes lifelong learning. Always pushing yourself, beyond the bare minimum, seeking out new knowledge, new experiences. Have you taken advantage of any recent training opportunities? I mean, beyond just, the stuff you have to do.
Actually, I recently did this leadership workshop, and it's funny because it made me realize how much I don't know.
I think we've all been there.
It's easy to get so, caught up in the routine, you forget how much is out there to learn.
That's the thing about prepare self. It's a mindset. You got to be proactive.
Right.
And speaking of proactive, ADP 622 really emphasizes studying, doctrine, military history, even geopolitics.
Right.
Because the world, it keeps changing, and in the Army, you got to be ready for anything.
It's true. Like that saying, the only constant is change.
Right.
Relying on the old way of doing things, that's not going to cut it in a new situation.
Nope. Now, moving on from individual preparation to building a real team, let's talk about creating that positive environment.
Yeah. I've had leaders I would run through a brick wall for. And then there's,
You've seen both ends of the spectrum.
I've seen both ends.
The leader's impact, it's huge. Morale, effectiveness, all of it.
It's true. It can make all the difference. So how do you actually make that happen? That whole positive environment thing ADP 622 talks about.
It really comes down to building a culture of trust, respect, and open communication, really genuinely open.
Okay, sure, but that sounds a little...
Easier said than done.
Yeah, a little mission impossible, maybe.
Yeah.
So how do leaders actually do that? Build that kind of trust, I mean.
Well, ADP 622 highlights a few really practical things. First, being approachable.
Okay.
And I don't just mean saying your door is always open.
Mm-hmm.
Really being present, engaged with your team, not hiding behind your rank.
I bet that's tough though, right? Especially for like newer leaders,
Yeah.
finding that balance between like authority and
Being one of the team.
yeah, exactly.
It is a tough one, especially in the Army. But when your soldiers know they can actually come to you no matter what, with questions, concerns, whatever, without being judged,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you start building real trust.
Makes sense. What else?
Open and honest communication. Huge. Creating opportunities for your team to actually share what they're thinking.
Even if it's not what you want to hear.
especially Den, you never know where that next great idea is going to come from.
That reminds me of this one time back when I was a platoon leader, we were planning this pretty complex operation, and I had it all figured out in my head.
Oh,
And then Sergeant Jones, one of my squad leaders, he speaks up during the planning session and super respectfully suggests a totally different approach.
go ahead.
Turns out he was spot on, way more effective than what I had in mind. I learned a lot that day.
See, you got to have those open channels.
Yeah, sometimes the best ideas come from the folks on the ground, the ones closest to the action. But, and I know ADP 622 talks about this too. You can't avoid conflict completely, can you?
Nope. Part of life, right. And honestly, handled well, it can actually help a team grow stronger.
I get that, but it takes some serious skill to turn like a potential shouting match into a learning moment for everyone.
It does. ADP 622 stresses that avoiding conflict altogether, it usually backfires.
Okay, so how do you do it then? Address it head on without it getting out of control.
The document emphasizes nipping things in the bud early. Don't let those resentments simmer. And you've got to be impartial. No playing favorites, genuinely trying to see all sides, all angles.
That takes some serious emotional intelligence, though.
You're telling me. But, these are skills. You can learn them. You can practice them. The more you do, the better you get at handling the inevitable interpersonal stuff.
It's all part of that prepare self, right?
Exactly. Now, beyond just handling conflict, building a strong team environment means tapping into esprit de corps, that sense of shared identity, shared purpose.
We talked about that a bit earlier, but what are some concrete ways some things leaders can do to actually build that?
Think about some of those legendary units from history,
Hmm.
right? They often had that something special, the shared story, the tradition, even just a nickname.
Oh, right. Like those units with the patches and the mottos, that becomes part of who they are.
Exactly. ADP 622.
Mm.
It encourages leaders to really embrace those traditions,
Oh,
those stories, because it reminds us we're part of something bigger than ourselves.
that's powerful.
It is. It's about connecting to that legacy, the folks who came before us, leaving our own mark for those coming up.
So it's about way more than just, winning on the battlefield. It's about living those values, upholding the traditions that make the unit what it is.
Absolutely. And speaking of leaving a legacy, that takes us to the next competency, develops others.
This one feels big. It's about recognizing that being a leader isn't just about like what you achieve, it's about the people you bring up along the way.
100%. Develops others. It's about taking your knowledge, your experience, and using it to help others on their leadership journey.
Paying it forward. And ADP 622 talks about different ways to do that, right?
Yeah. Counseling, coaching, mentoring, all crucial, all different.
Okay, break those down for me. What's the difference and how do we use them well?
Great question. So counseling tends to be more formal, right? Tied to like performance reviews, setting goals. It's structured feedback.
Okay.
Coaching, though, that's more in the moment. Real-time guidance, helping someone master a specific skill, that kind of thing.
Like having a more experienced buddy there with you, walking you through it.
Exactly. Then there's mentoring. This one can go beyond your chain of command. Longer-term relationship where someone more experienced, they're guiding your overall growth. Not just the job, but like life stuff too.
It's like they've been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Yeah.
And they're sharing what they learned along the way. I've had some fantastic mentors. Seriously, I wouldn't be here without them.
That's the impact. It ripples out. It's an investment in the future of the Army by investing in its people.
Absolutely. But developing others is more than those one-on-one chats, right? It's got to be about creating those opportunities for your team to actually learn by doing.
Exactly. ADP 622 is big on giving your team a chance to try, even if it means stepping outside their comfort zones a little.
That reminds me, early in my career, my platoon sergeant, real solid leader, let me run point on this really complex training exercise. I was terrified, honestly.
Yeah.
But he had my back. And I learned more from that one experience than a month in the classroom.
See? And that's develops others in a nutshell. Trust your team enough to let them own it, and they'll rise to the occasion.
It's like finding that sweet spot, right, where you're giving enough guidance, but also letting them, actually learn by doing.
Exactly. And that kind of trust, that's how you create a culture where people aren't afraid to, you know, take a chance, try something new, even if it doesn't work out perfectly the first time.
Because sometimes those failures, those are the best learning experiences.
Absolutely. You want your team to feel safe, to try, to innovate,
Yeah.
learn from those mistakes. That's how we all grow as individuals and as a unit.
It all comes back to that whole continuous improvement thing, right? Which
Yeah.
ADP 622 talks about a lot.
Yep. And that brings us to our last competency, stewards the profession. This one's about the bigger picture, realizing we're all part of something much bigger.
We've talked about leaving a legacy and all that, but what does it actually mean to be a steward of the Army?
It means understanding that the decisions we make today, they have a ripple effect. They impact the Army for years down the line. It's about integrity, doing the right thing even when nobody's looking, making choices that are good for the whole institution, not just our own careers.
So it's like thinking long term, even if we might not see the full impact of what we're doing for a while, right?
Right. Think about those really great Army leaders throughout history. They didn't just focus on the immediate battle. They made decisions that literally shaped what the Army became.
Like George Washington, keeping the Continental Army together through sheer will. That's
Exactly. Or Omar Bradley, even in the middle of World War II, recognizing how important it was to treat German civilians with respect. I mean, that helped lay the groundwork for a more peaceful Europe after the war. Those leaders, they knew that leadership went way beyond just the battlefield.
it's about holding on to those values, the traditions that make the Army what it is, but also having that vision, adapting to whatever the world throws at you.
Exactly. And that's a key takeaway from ADP 622. It's not some outdated rule book. It's a guide to leadership in a world that never stops changing.
It's a call to action for all of us. Every single soldier, no matter what your rank is,
Yeah.
step up, be the leader who inspires, who motivates, who leaves that lasting positive impact.
And it starts with that first step, however small it might seem.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into ADP 622, here's what I want to leave you with. What really resonated with you today? What's one action you can take? Like starting right now, today, to be a better leader, more effective, more inspiring.
Think about those competencies we talked about. Prepare self, creates a positive environment, develops others, stewards the profession. Which one speaks to you the most? Where do you see the most room for growth? For you personally as a leader?
Because honestly, at the end of the day, knowing this stuff, it's not enough. We have to actually use it every single day.
Your team, your unit, the whole Army, they're counting on you.
Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, keep striving to embody those values that make the US Army the best in the world.